Even in the most troubled lands, you will find community, inequality, and the hope for sustainability. Troubled Lands is a game created by myself, Tom Finwald, my colleague Brent Kiva-Kyler, and our colleague and artist Catherine Jameson. To play Troubled Lands, get in groups of 3 players. Each player usually sits at a different table and shares a common area. There's usually no interaction between the tables at all, so just separate each other groups out, and it doesn't matter how many groups of 3 there are. The important thing is that each group has 3 characters, and it's the same 3 characters in each group. There's a farmer, Francis, a rancher, Rachel, and a lumberjack named Larry. Now, each of these characters has a preferred resource, and the farmer wants to have fields, the rancher really likes pastures, and the lumberjack needs forests. They share a common land area, and these resources are in the common land area. So there's always 12 spaces, 12 plots of land in the common area. And each space is either a forest, a field, a pasture. It's fallow, which means that nothing's planted on it, or it's eroded. I'm going to explain all this later. There are always 12 or fewer turns in a game. You'll decide how many turns are in a game when you get started. Each turn, each player takes 1 action. The options are planting one of those resources, harvesting one of those resources, sanctioning another player that causes them to lose points, or restoring land. I'll tell you more about that. For the turn order, first the farmer goes, then the rancher, last the lumberjack. All this is written on your player cards, so when you play, you'll get a card, and it'll tell you what you can do. That's planting things, harvesting things, sanctioning, and restoring. And if you decide to harvest, you have an opportunity to make points, but only make points from harvesting. Now, notice that, yes, like I said, only making points from harvesting, but notice how someone like the farmer specializes and does certain things more than others. So each player has his or her own specialties. And so pay attention when you start to play, look at the cards of other players and yourself and compare and see who does what best, who scores points for what, and maybe there's some ways you can get along with each other or not. You can also see this all written on this chart, and this chart also appears in the rules. So just take a look at what each of you can do and think about that. So on your turn, you choose 1 action. Your first option is to plant. If you decide to plant, you turn 1 or more fallow land areas into one of the following: 1 or more fields, 1 or more pastures, 1 or more forests. Planting is how you create new resources, so it's an important action, and that's what you do. So if you harvest is how you gain points. Harvesting turns 1 of those 3 resources into fallow land. So you take 1 or more fields, 1 or more pasture, 1 or more forest, and you flip them out and make them fallow. And usually you can get some points for doing this action. Your third option is to sanction. If you decide to sanction, you just cause another player to lose 2 points. It takes your whole turn, but it makes them lose 2 points. If you decide to restore land, what happens is you take eroded land away and you turn it into fallow land. Now, nothing can be planted on eroded land, so if land does become eroded, you might want to do this. But how does land become eroded? Well, erosion happens when there's not enough forest. And when there's not enough forest, you can have a loss of resources if there's a lot of rain. So each round, a weather card is drawn. Everybody takes an action, and then after everyone has 1 action, you draw a card, and it has a number on it. If that number is more than the number of forests in the common area, then some erosion will occur. And whenever erosion does occur, you take 2 lands away, and they're selected to become eroded. Now, which land becomes eroded? First, if there's any fallow land, that will become eroded. Then, if there's no more fallow land left, you take fields, then you take pasture, and last, if there's no other option, you take forests away. So, your land can start to look like this if it becomes eroded a lot, and nothing can be planted on eroded land. Well, there's 6 eroded lands out there. Okay. You also will have some scorecards. You can mark your actions and scores on the scorecards. And you can put your name, group number, and it tells you how many points you get for harvesting, lets you mark actions, and keep track of points per turn. So, that's all you need to have for playing the game. Here's how you set the game up. Get in groups of 3. You can have, if you have a number that's not divisible by 3, 2 players can share a character. 2 people can share a character. You distribute roll and score cards. So, in your group, everyone has a roll card, and each of them gets their corresponding roll card, tells them what they can do. You have score cards, so you can mark down your actions. Great. Now you're at step 3. Create some supply piles. Take all the resources and sort them into 5 stacks by resource type. Then you create a commons. The commons has 12 spaces of land. Always has 12 spaces. Doesn't matter what the arrangement is, just as long as you have 6 forests to begin with, 2 fields to begin with, 2 pastures, and 2 fallows. And there are no eroded areas in the commons area to begin with. And keep in mind, there's always exactly 12 spaces in the commons. 5th and last, set up the weather deck. Your teacher or organizer may have already done this for you. If not, you should make sure that all the groups have the same order and that none of the groups know the order of the cards. Keep the weather deck upside down and only reveal the top card of the weather deck at the end of a round, once all 3 players have had their action. Now you're ready to play. What you have in front of you at a table are 3 players. Everyone has their player card. Everyone has their score card. You have 5 supply piles with resources, a commons area, and a weather deck. Refer to the rules, and because the rules show all of this as well. So, sample round of play. Here's what could happen. The first player to go is the farmer. And let's say the farmer decides to harvest fields. Now, they can take only 1 field. However, each field is worth 4 points each. That might be a good idea. That's what Francis thinks. So you replace 1 field with a fallow area. Okay, and that's their whole turn. They took 1 action. Now, they mark down their name, their group, their identity, and they write, okay, I harvested 1 field. How many points do I get? I get 4 points per field. I write 4 points there because I harvested. You only get points for harvesting. Now, the next player to go is always the rancher. The rancher decides to plant fields. Don't know why, but they decide to plant some fields. And so they look here. Now, they can replace up to 3 fallow areas with fields. They don't have to do 3. They could only do 1 or 2 if they wanted, but they decide if there's 3 fallows, maybe I'll do all 3. But they don't get any points because they're planting. Okay. Now, they see 1, 2, 3 fallows and replace with 1, 2, 3 fields. And they're done. Now, it's time for them to put down their name, their group number. They say they're rancher. They planted 3 fields, and they don't get any points because they didn't harvest. They just planted. Okay. Now it's the lumberjack's turn. And for the lumberjack, he decides, for reasons I can't tell you what, but he decides that he's going to sanction, he's going to cause another player to lose 2 points. He has to pick, does he cause the farmer or the rancher to lose 2 points? And let's see, who does he pick? He decides to pick the rancher. So he says, I'm going to sanction you, rancher. And he doesn't get any points himself, but the rancher has to get out her card and mark down -2. So she's really not had a good round this turn. Okay, well, everyone's had their action. Now it's time to see how much erosion there is. And let's say the card drawn is a 7. If the weather card is greater than the number of forests in the communal area, erosion will occur? Well, 7, okay, 7 is greater than the number of forests, 6 forests. So first replace any fallow land with eroded. Well, there's no fallow land, so next replace fields. Doesn't matter which 2 fields, but just pick 2. Let's do these 2. Okay. So that's what a round looks like. And all groups are actually going at the same time, or at least they're each getting the same card drawn at the end of any given round. So the first round it might be 7, the second round the weather card might be 5, and the third round it might be 2, and the fourth round it might be 10. But all the groups should have the same card in the same order and not look at what card is coming up until after they're done. And that's what a round looks like. You have about 2 to 4 minutes per round and up to 12 rounds per game. Now there's 3 ways to play and win. If you play collaboratively, you play as a group, trying to make your group have a better score than the other groups as a team. If you play competitively, just try to beat the other players within your group. So even if you have -2 points, if the other players have -4 and -6, well, -2 does better than -4 and -6. But if you play as the independent goals game, what I want you to do is think, how can I do the best in my role? So if there's 2 groups, let's say there's going to be 1 winner as a farmer, 1 winner as a rancher, and 1 winner as a lumberjack. They could be in the same group, or they could be scattered between the 2 groups. So it's farmers against farmers, ranchers against ranchers, and lumberjacks against lumberjacks. But you never interact with other people in other groups. So you just try to do better than they would otherwise be doing in their group. It's fun to think about it that way. So if you have a lot of different groups, let's say you have 8 groups, there's going to be 4 farmers, 4 ranchers, and 4 lumberjacks who are winners. Remember, no interaction between groups. A few recommendations if you play. If you only ever play once, play the independent goals game. It's the most interesting. But if you play all 3, play in this order. First collaborative, next competitive, and finally do the independent goals game. You might not have time to play full games in all 3. So go ahead and just do shorter versions of the competitive and collaborative games. Just end them after 6 or 8 rounds. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions or want to see more materials, teaching resources, research articles about the game, visit www.troubledlands.com. You can also order copies of the game there and additional high-quality print cards, or print your own. Don't hesitate to contact me at troubledlands@gmail.com for more information, or even a Skype visit. I'll be happy to talk to your classroom or your organization. And good luck, and have fun exploring community, inequality, and sustainability in these troubled lands. Thanks.